Maya Chen had always blended into the background, but nothing prepared her for how invisible she'd feel walking the crowded halls of Riverside High. It was her first day, mid-junior year, new town, new everything. Her family had just moved from San Francisco to this small Oregon town after her dad's job transfer, ripping her away from the city she loved and her best friend, Sarah. Clutching her wrinkled schedule like a lifeline, Maya weaved through the maze of students who moved in tight, familiar cliques. Laughter echoed off lockers, inside jokes floating past her like coded language she'd never understand. She was trying to find room 204 when she bumped into someone. Hard. Her books scattered across the floor, and before she could apologize, a sharp voice stabbed through the hallway noise. "Watch where you're going, freak." The girl standing over her had a perfectly curated look. Icy blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a mouth made for cruelty. Jessica Martinez. Maya didn't know her name yet, but her words hit like a slap. "Don't they teach you how to walk in China?" Jessica jeered, flanked by her smirking sidekick Brooklyn and the mocking laughter of Tyler. Maya, cheeks flaming, murmured, "I'm from San Francisco." Jessica just shrugged. Same difference, before strutting away, their laughter echoing like a closing door. That afternoon, Maya skipped the cafeteria and found quiet refuge in the library, the only place that didn't expect anything from her. She sat in the far corner by the window, her untouched sandwich resting beside her books. Outside, the Oregon sky wept softly, rain tracing lines down the glass like the tears she refused to let fall. Her phone buzzed once, a message from Sarah, but Maya couldn't bring herself to open it. Not yet. She stared out the window, wondering if this move was a fresh start or a cruel rerun of loneliness. Everyone said high school was about finding your place, but as she sat alone, the dull hum of the library surrounding her like a fog, Maya couldn't help but feel like hers had been lost somewhere between room 204 and the look in Jessica's eyes. By the end of her first week at Riverside High, Maya had begun to understand that Jessica Martinez wasn't just mean, she was calculated. Her cruelty was polished to perfection, sharp enough to cut but subtle enough to slip under the radar of teachers. In English class, Jessica would glance at Maya's thrifted denim jacket and say, "Nice jacket, Maya, very unique." With a smile so sweet Mrs. Henderson would nod approvingly, never catching the bite behind the compliment. Maya would sit frozen for the rest of class, suddenly self-conscious of every stitch, wondering if everyone else thought she looked ridiculous. Tyler chimed in with practiced laughter, like Jessica's echo, while Brooklyn delivered quiet jabs with a roll of her eyes or a passing smirk that said more than words ever could. Their cruelty wasn't loud, it was surgical. Maya couldn't fight back because half the time she couldn't even explain what had been done to her. What hurt most was the silence of the others. Some students looked away when Jessica struck, guilt flickering briefly in their eyes before they turned back to their notebooks. A few even chuckled. Not out of malice, but fear of becoming the next target. Maya felt like she was living under a microscope, her every move a potential punchline. Even in moments when no one spoke, she sensed the eyes, the judgment. And then there was Alex Torres, the boy with quiet eyes and smudged pencil sketches in the margins of his chemistry notes. He sat behind her, never spoke, but she could feel it. He saw what was happening. Once, when Jessica's sarcasm was especially sharp, Maya caught the way Alex's jaw clenched, but he said nothing, just like everyone else. Every morning, Maya would look in the mirror and whisper, "Just keep your head down." But the truth was, the lower she tried to shrink, the more visible she seemed to become. By October, the cruelty had shifted from passive-aggressive jabs to something darker and more personal. Jessica had somehow discovered that Maya's parents ran a small family-owned restaurant, and that detail became her new weapon. At lunch, Jessica would wrinkle her nose theatrically as Maya passed by, announcing, "You, what's that smell? Did someone bring dog food again?" The words always landed like a slap, sharp and humiliating, amplified by the laughter of onlookers who rarely understood or cared what they were laughing at. Ashamed, Maya stopped bringing the food her mother lovingly packed each morning, the dumplings, the rice bowls, the comfort of home. Instead, she grabbed whatever bland sandwich the cafeteria offered and ate quickly, the silence at her table louder than the noise in the lunchroom. The ache in her stomach was more than hunger. It was grief. the quiet death of something sacred. Then came the digital cruelty. Unflattering photos of Maya, mid-blink, slouched, caught off guard, began surfacing online, captioned with snide remarks like "wrong place, wrong face" or "someone called the fashion police." The posts would vanish quickly, always just after gaining traction, like a ghost leaving no proof but the damage it caused. One morning, Maya approached her locker to find the words "Go back" scrawled in black permanent marker. She stared at it for a full minute before reporting it, her voice small in the principal's office. But Principal Johnson barely looked up. "These things happen," he said with a sigh. "Let's not make it a bigger deal than it is." Maya walked out feeling smaller than ever. Her grades slipped, her spark dimmed. She started sneaking around the school like a shadow, taking long, winding routes to avoid Jessica and her orbit. The teachers who once praised her quiet focus now only noticed the tardies, not the fear that caused them. By November, the bullying escalated to something deeply personal, a campaign of slow psychological unraveling. Jessica, like a predator sensing wounded prey, upped the cruelty with sharp precision. In the cafeteria one afternoon, she raised her voice just enough to be heard across the room. "I heard your family's restaurant is failing," she sneered. "Maybe they should stick to what they know instead of trying to poison Americans with their weird food." Laughter followed, cold and sharp like broken glass. Maya sat frozen, her face hot but her eyes dry, not because she didn't feel the sting, but because she'd trained herself not to cry in public. The truth wasn't far off. Her parents worked 16-hour days trying to keep the restaurant afloat. Maya saw the bills, the worry in her mother's eyes, the exhaustion in her father's silence. Jessica's words weren't just cruel, they were invasive, like someone reaching into her home and dragging its shame into the light. But the worst came in the locker room. Maya already hated gym class, the exposed space, the unspoken judgment. But now it felt like a war zone. Jessica and her clique would whisper and laugh as Maya changed, loud enough for everyone to hear. One day, Jessica reached out and pinched her arm. "Maybe you should eat some of your own cooking," she said with a laugh. "You could use some meat on your bones." That night, Maya stood in front of her mirror for hours, eyes scanning her reflection for everything that was wrong. Too thin, too short, too flat, too foreign. The voice in her head, once her own, now sounded eerily like Jessica's. She didn't sleep. Instead, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, mentally rewriting each insult, imagining stronger comebacks, heroic retorts. But when the sun rose and the hallway filled again with footsteps and laughter, Maya's silence returned like armor, heavy but familiar. By December, Maya had stopped trying to be seen. She moved through the halls like a shadow, her voice reduced to brief replies when called on in class. Her lunch breaks were spent tucked into quiet corners of empty classrooms, chewing through tasteless sandwiches while pretending to read. Her parents noticed the withdrawal, how she no longer talked about her day, how her eyes seemed dimmer. But they mistook it for teenage growing pains. "You just need to put yourself out there more," her mother said gently one evening, slicing vegetables in the kitchen. "Maybe join a club?" But Maya had tried that. She'd lasted 2 meetings in the art club before Jessica's voice found her even there. "Are those supposed to be eyes? They look like ghosts." The room had laughed, and Maya, once again, had shrunk into invisibility. The worst wasn't the comments, it was the silence. Students now avoided her gaze entirely, or treated her with the effortless cruelty that comes from believing someone doesn't belong. She heard whispers of parties she'd never be invited to, laughter over jokes she didn't understand, group chats she would never be added to. It was like watching life from behind glass, close enough to see, but forever out of reach. And then there was Alex Torres. He still sat behind her in chemistry. He rarely spoke, but his silence wasn't cruel, it was watchful. One afternoon, Maya dropped her pencil. She barely noticed until Alex bent forward, picked it up, and handed it back with a quiet, "You okay?" It was only 2 words, but Maya's throat tightened. She nodded too quickly, afraid her voice might betray her. That small kindness, so simple, so human, nearly shattered her. The new semester brought no reset, only reinforcement of Maya's reality. Jessica had escalated to an almost obsessive level of cruelty, a calculated campaign that stretched from hallways to home. Social media became a battlefield where Maya was always the target and never the victor. Cruel memes, edited photos, and anonymous messages filled her inbox, tearing at her already fraying sense of self. She deleted the apps, but the images and whispers lingered like scars. One photo in particular had a comment etched into her memory: "Kill yourself. No one would miss you." Maya stared at that sentence for hours, letting it echo inside her chest like a dull drum. At first, the words shocked her, then they began to sink in, to sound almost plausible. Her parents were always working. She had no friends, no safe place, no voice. What if she just disappeared? The idea grew like mold in a forgotten room, spreading slowly, quietly. Maya began reading articles about methods, not out of drama, but with quiet calculation. She made lists. She cleaned her room. She gave away her favorite books, telling herself someone else might enjoy them more. Her parents didn't notice. The restaurant drained them, and Maya had learned not to demand attention. But the final straw came at lunch when Jessica, with faux clumsiness, spilled chocolate milk all over Maya's shirt. The cafeteria roared with laughter, and Maya stood frozen, dripping, humiliated beyond words. She walked home that day in silence, changed out of her soaked clothes, and wrote what she thought would be her final letter. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a cry from the deepest place inside her, a voice that had been silenced for too long, a voice still hoping, just barely, that someone might hear. Maya had it all planned. She had researched the method, picked a time when her parents would be working late, and laid everything out with unsettling precision. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual, as if it were holding its breath. She moved with eerie calm, her mind distant, her emotions muted. Everything felt final. But just as she was about to take the final step, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a number she didn't recognize. "Hey, it's Alex from chemistry. Are you okay? You seemed really upset today." The words blinked back at her, impossibly simple, but they shattered the wall she'd built around herself. Her hands trembled, her vision blurred. Someone had noticed. Then another message came, and another. "I've seen what Jessica does to you. It's not right. I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't." Maya collapsed onto the floor, phone still in hand, sobbing into her sleeves, not from pain, but from the sudden realization that she wasn't invisible, that someone saw her, that someone cared. She thought about Alex's quiet kindness, the way he had looked at her like she mattered. Her fingers moved before she could stop them. "I'm not okay. I need help." The reply came instantly. "Where are you? I'm coming over." She stared at it, then typed, "You don't even know where I live." His answer, "I'll figure it out. Just please don't do anything until I get there." And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel entirely alone. Alex didn't come alone. Standing next to him was Elena Rodriguez, a senior Maya had only known by reputation. Student council president, outspoken, confident. Maya shrank slightly at the sight of them on her doorstep, still red-eyed and emotionally raw, but neither of them flinched. "I thought you might need someone who knows how to handle this," Alex explained gently. Elena sat beside Maya without hesitation, not with pity, but with a fierce calm that made Maya feel seen. "I was bullied too," Elena confessed. "Not like this, but enough to know what it does to your head. Enough to understand what it feels like when it starts to sound like your own voice telling you you're worthless." And just like that, something cracked open in Maya again, but this time, not in pain. For the first time, Maya told someone the entire truth. She spoke about Jessica's cruelty, the racist comments, the humiliations in the lunchroom, the photos, the messages. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. Alex listened with quiet fury building in his expression, while Elena pulled out a notebook, calmly noting everything. "This isn't just bullying," she said. "It's harassment. It's illegal." Maya watched them work. No judgment, no disbelief, no dismissive. It happens. Just validation, strategy, and strength. When she finally whispered, "Will you help me report this?" Elena didn't hesitate. "Absolutely, but first we talk to your parents." And for the first time in months, Maya didn't feel alone. She felt heard. She felt like someone was finally on her side. When Maya's parents finally learned the truth, the weight of it hit like a storm. Her mother wept as she held Maya tightly, whispering apologies between sobs. Her father sat in stunned silence at first, then slammed his fist against the table in quiet rage. They blamed themselves for being too busy, too tired, too blind. The restaurant had drained their energy, but now they realized the real cost wasn't just financial, it was their daughter's silence, her suffering. "We should have seen it," her mother said, voice breaking. "We should have been there." The very next day, Maya walked into school not alone, but surrounded by a team, her parents, Alex and Elena. Elena carried a folder stuffed with screenshots, statements, and the school's own anti-bullying policy, annotated, highlighted, undeniable. Principal Johnson, who had once brushed things off as kids being kids, sat rigid behind his desk as Elena laid it all out like a case file. The digital harassment, the witness reports, the timeline. It was no longer just Maya's word, it was evidence. Jessica, Brooklyn, and Tyler were called in one by one. The united front that had once haunted Maya's days fell apart under pressure. Brooklyn cracked first, her voice trembling as she admitted her parts and apologized. Tyler tried to deflect, claim he was just joking, but the screenshots told a different story. Jessica remained defiant longer, arms crossed, calling Maya too sensitive and brushing it off as harmless fun. But when she was told the school board would be informed, and possibly the district, her bravado collapsed. Her apology, when it finally came, was hollow. The consequences were immediate. Jessica received a 3-day suspension, was stripped of her position as class vice president, and barred from the spring formal committee. Brooklyn and Tyler got lesser penalties but were required to attend peer mediation sessions and submit formal written apologies. For the first time, the system, the adults, had taken Maya's pain seriously, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she mattered. Life after the confrontation wasn't magically fixed. Maya still carried anxiety through the hallways and flinched when she heard Jessica's voice, but the weight of isolation had lifted. With Alex by her side, she slowly found her place at Riverside High, surrounded by peers who valued sincerity over popularity. Elena became her mentor, guiding her into advocacy and teaching her the power of reclaiming her voice. Volunteering in the peer counseling program gave Maya purpose. Sharing her story helped others feel less alone and began the long process of turning pain into power. Her parents, shaken by how close they had come to losing her, shifted priorities, hiring extra help at the restaurant, and creating space for family again. It was the beginning of something new, not perfect, but real. Change rippled through the school. Jessica, now without her allies, grew quieter, her taunts falling flat as students began pushing back. Maya started therapy with Dr. Sarah Kim, who helped her navigate the lingering trauma and reminded her that healing wasn't a straight path. Maya joined the art club and later founded a peer support group for bullied students. She and Alex grew even closer, eventually becoming a couple, a relationship rooted in friendship, understanding, and survival. By the time graduation arrived, Maya had become a symbol of resilience. On stage, delivering the commencement speech, she faced the school that once broke her and said, "Your worth isn't defined by cruelty, it's inherent, unchangeable, and sacred. Choose kindness, it saves lives." Maya's journey didn't end at Riverside. She pursued psychology and social work, determined to be the support system she once needed. Elena became a civil rights lawyer, Alex a teacher focused on inclusion, and even Brooklyn, changed by the experience, became a youth counselor. Jessica struggled with the consequences of her actions, but years later, she reached out with a sincere apology. Maya, with quiet strength, forgave her, not to excuse the past, but to free herself from it. In conference halls and classrooms, Maya would often close her speeches with this: "I survived the worst of humanity and found the best of it. We all have the power to choose. Choose kindness, someone's life might depend on it."